Chapter 364. Sorry. Luo Nan rushed out in a rush. The metal door sensed a human body and opened to two sides. Driver Qin followed him out, but he still didn't say a word. It was as if nothing had happened. The couple cautiously avoided a certain someone who was suspected to be mentally ill. They took the elevator up. In the end, Luo Nan was shy. It was hard for him to avoid feeling awkward. He repeated his previous words, "Sorry, Brother Qin. I was distracted." Driver Qin continued to smile. "It's fine, Mr. Luo. Shall we go back now?" "Yes, let's go back." Luo Nan closed the notebook as he spoke. He didn't dare to look at it anymore. Cultivation, gear, outsourcing, security threats, and various other matters were all squeezed together. If he were to study more notes, he wouldn't be able to endure it even if he were to be torn into 3 pieces. But when he sat in the car, Luo Nan was unable to endure the silent atmosphere brewing. All sorts of thoughts came one after another, and some of them were quite reasonable. The gym master taught me about the root receptacle, root nature, and root trigger. They can distinguish one's innate talent and temperament. They can resonate with the life sketches. The 9 orifices 6 roots internal refinement technique is a method of tempering one's body. It can form a more realistic self-portrait. Grandfather's notes mostly record targeted drugs that affect the human nervous system. If I don't consider the issue of theoretical control and purely use it as a reference, perhaps there might be some progress. Oh my God. I can't hold it in anymore. What should I do? Luo Nan picked up the folded notebook and slapped his forehead. He was vexed and yearning. The emotions bubbled up from the bottom of his heart, wave after wave, making him restless. He wanted to verify his thoughts, but he didn't know where to start. This time, it wasn't because he was at a loss. It was because there were too many places to start. Yes, the light of inspiration in Luo Nan's mind was like lightning in a thunderstorm. It flickered fiercely in his mind, forming hundreds and thousands of streaks in an instant. They were like golden snakes dancing wildly, whipping at the tip of his heart. The more he thought, the more tormented he felt. Luo Nan sat in the front passenger seat, using the notebook to press against his head. In the end, he was defeated by the impulse of inspiration. He sucked in a breath of cold air and flipped open his brown notebook. Just as he was about to start scribbling, he still had a bit of rationality left in him. He flipped back to his own notebook and found a blank space. Then he started scribbling furiously. Classification technique, internal refinement technique, mind medicine, life sketches. Some of these related knowledge flowed smoothly, while some only existed in concepts. However, when they were connected, they unknowingly formed a vast and vague network that covered and explained everything. The spiritual light flashed like lightning, but the writing speed was still too slow. Luo Nan's 2 legs were trembling with anxiety. The first line of his handwriting was barely neat. But later on, his handwriting was so messy that it was out of shape. Many of his thoughts were simply replaced by simple symbols. Some were even randomly sketched out due to his emotions. Just like this, Luo Nan quickly filled up 3 pages of paper. His mind suddenly went blank, and the tip of the pen was unable to fall down no matter what. Only then did this burst of inspiration come to an abrupt end. Perhaps he had only remembered 50%, no, 30%. Beads of sweat seeped out of Luo Nan's palms, back, and forehead. He didn't care. He just flipped through the few pages that he had recorded from beginning to end. For some things that were too illegible and abstract, he would try to recall, interpret, and then make new notes. He was racing against time and memory. He was competing against the most mysterious and unfathomable of inspirations. He flipped through page after page like this. He made notes and added notes. Soon, he filled up 6 or 7 blank pages. It was more than twice the amount he had recorded from the beginning. Then he flipped through the pages for the third time. This time, the pressure was much lighter. He looked through the full 10 pages once more. The more he read, the more relaxed he became. Very good. He was able to make up for it in time. He confirmed that more than 50% of his thoughts had left behind traces. There were some that were more detailed. Luo Nan's wristband vibrated. At first, Luo Nan simply ignored it. Then Driver Chin coughed lightly to remind him. He shot a glance, and his scalp tightened. Hiss. Aunt? Where are you? What time is it? Why aren't you home yet? Mrs. Luo Shuqing's tone was very stifling. She was probably really angry. Luo Nan stared blankly. Right. Where was he? He turned his head to look at the driver's seat. Driver Chin turned on the headlights, indicating that he should look at the sign in front of him. Luo Nan looked at the sign and read, I'm at Rongxing Street. Cough. I'm outside the community. I'll be there soon. Luo Nan only had time to confirm the time now. It would have been better if he didn't look. Once he looked, his face twitched. 23:47. It was almost midnight. Luo Nan was able to confirm that the security car he was in was already parked outside the community. He didn't know how long it had been there. Driver Chin sat quietly in the driver's seat. He maintained his silence until now. This was his usual style. Luo Nan needed to express his gratitude. Otherwise, he would have been disturbed in the process of retracing his inspiration. It would have been impossible for him to record 10 pages of inspirations. Brother Chin. Many thanks. Luo Nan's clumsy tongue revealed itself once more. He was stuck here. He didn't know what he should say for a time. Driver Chin laughed again. He spoke a rare long sentence, there has never been time for cultivation and training. Especially when you've just learned a new move. When I first started learning martial arts, I was scratching my head when I learned this skill from my teacher. I hated that I couldn't learn it the next day. When I developed my special ability, there was no need to even mention it. Driver Chin was good at understanding others. Luo Nan's awkwardness eased quite a bit. Besides, he was already at the entrance of the community. He wasn't in a rush to go back. With his current state of mind and his pile of luggage and medicine boxes, it was highly likely that he would be confiscated if he brought them back directly. Luo Nan slowly adjusted his breathing and calmed his state of mind. He casually asked about Driver Chin's situation. It could be considered a chat to relax. Brother Chin also dual cultivates martial arts and special abilities. Driver Chin nodded slightly. I first learned martial arts at Luhe Gym. I inexplicably gained special abilities. Later on, my martial arts became more and more impure. I made my master angry. He spoke modestly, but Luo Nan was filled with deep veneration. Luhe Gym. So Brother Chin is under Mr. Giant Arms. Mr. Giant Arms, whose arms were thick and solid, gave Luo Nan an extremely deep impression. His pure fleshly body penetrated through steel. His fist energy was perfect. It was truly inconceivable. Luo Nan only found out later on that Mr. Giant Arms was a powerhouse in the top 10 of Xia City in terms of fleshly body strength. He was top-notch even in the B rank. Driver Chin held Mr. Giant Arms in high esteem. Mr. Giant Arms is a pure refinement of his fleshly body. His martial arts are pure beyond pure. Not to mention that I have a special ability that distracts my mind, even my temperament is a bit flat. I'm not really suited for Mr. Giant Arms. I can only learn a little bit of it. Can't special abilities and martial arts mutually promote each other? Driver Chin laughed. My special ability leans heavily toward defense. Mr. Giant Arms pays the most attention to instantaneous explosive power. In the end, there are irreconcilable areas between the two. Luo Nan grunted. He subconsciously sized up Driver Chin a few times, but he forgot that his mind was currently excited. His soul strength was especially active. He subconsciously clairvoyantly. In an instant, Driver Chin's form seemed to fade away. A group of simple stars were arranged within. They were connected to each other, forming a peculiar image. This was a life sketch. Oh, there was more. Chapter 365. Inside and outside of Chauffeur Chin's concise and abstract life sketches were countless sand-like stars. They flickered in and out of existence, radiating a dim light. Luo Nan could not help but compare the life sketches he had observed before. This was especially true for Cat Eyes and Zhang Yingying, the targets he had once focused on. Every star they presented was resplendent with radiance. The contrast with the gloomy void was extremely intense. It was like silver-white wax tears dripping down on a black paper. There were even lines connecting them that were hard to distinguish between real and fake. Such a scene was undoubtedly influenced by the visualization diagram. Looking at it alone, it was more like a group of abstract symbols. Only when these sketches were pieced together at a terrifying scale could one's senses no longer be entangled in the details. Only then could a hazy and magnificent scene of the starry sky be formed. Therefore, Luo Nan called it a sketch. It was a sketch that had just completed the outline of the composition. The details had yet to be carved. As for the star atlas before his eyes, the greatest difference was reflected in the details. Hundreds and thousands of stars were distributed within a certain range. Their luminosity was different, and their star magnitudes were different. Some shone with dazzling light, while others could barely be seen. The limited and clear star atlas became complicated, but it also became vivid at the same time. Even the narrowest area was sketched with fine and believable details. It was like the clear atmosphere of a plateau, far away from the light pollution of a metropolis. It was like the gorgeous night sky. Luo Nan nearly forgot that this was just the body and soul frame of an ability user. The current Luo Nan was no longer like when he first sketched out his life sketches. He was gesticulating with his hands, but he had been staring at Chauffeur Chin for far too long. Even with Chauffeur Chin's calm nature, he could not help but cough in warning. Oh, sorry. Luo Nan had repeated this word at least 3 times tonight. Luckily, Chauffeur Chin did not mind. He returned to his habitual silence and just responded with a smile. Luo Nan could not understand why his clairvoyance and depiction of his life sketches suddenly had so many details. However, he knew that he should get off the car and go home. Luo Nan tactfully declined Chauffeur Chin's good intentions and got off the car. He took out 2 boxes from the trunk of the car. The notebook was tucked under his left elbow. It was a bit uncomfortable, but he could still walk. He bid farewell to Chauffeur Chin and went straight home. There was no one else under the street lamps as he walked along the community road. This environment was very suitable for his thoughts to fly. And Luo Nan's brain power unconsciously began to surge. Why was he interested in Driver Chin? He wished that he could tackle this problem even in his dreams. Suppressing it again was easier said than done. It's better to disperse than to block. Luo Nan muttered a few words, and his mouth cracked open. His surging soul strength was like a flood from a broken dam, flowing in all directions within his blossoming smile. The sky outside the house was clear and bright, but when the image was projected into the heart lake, it instantly turned gloomy and dark. The hazy starry sky unfolded in Luo Nan's heart, covering an area of several dozen square kilometers. The life sketches of the thousands of households in the community and the tens of thousands of living beings were reflected one by one. As the living starry sky appeared, the suppressed heart fire spread throughout the starry sky. Soon, the heat dissipated, leaving only a little life fluctuation that resonated with the stars in the sky. Luo Nan's mind unconsciously became clear and transparent. He was in the clearish state. He was not in a meditative state, but he seemed to be in a meditative state. He sensed the interference and resonance between himself and the lives of others, and a direction of action naturally jumped out. He didn't get tangled up. He took advantage of the situation and the center of the vast star river. The visualization diagram that belonged solely to him naturally appeared. The structure of the tetrahedron, the inscribed sphere, and the outer scribed sphere corresponded with the tens of thousands of life sketches. They converged together. The long river of starlight flowed over the format pyramid. It seemed to completely submerge it, and a clear hierarchy appeared within the format pyramid. It was orderly and not chaotic in the slightest. Ever since that night at Frost River Reality, Luo Nan's format pyramid had already merged with the star river converged by the life sketches. However, it was also relatively independent. It seemed to act according to its own rules. Only when the domains clashed would the format pyramid's dominance become clear. But this time, the towering and unmoving format pyramid seemed to undergo a subtle change under the radiance of the tens of thousands of stars. There should be a change. Luo Nan spoke to himself in his mind. His way of thinking had undergone a substantial change under the assault of countless rays of light and fire. The format pyramid, the foundation of his body and soul, had to undergo a corresponding change in order to prove that it was real. Luo Nan's telepathic light shone from above, probing the visualization diagram inside and out. What was originally a fuzzy feeling turned into a clear understanding. The format pyramid of the past was a simple combination of geometric figures. It could be considered a conceptual expression. But now, this group of figures had a few more details. Points, lines, and planes were joined together, revealing the conformation of light and shadow and an even more marvelous texture. Similar details continued to increase, so much so that the concise conceptual diagram was a bit unsuitable. After all, a concept was a concept. The corresponding idealized diagram was far too rigid. Luo Nan's thoughts stirred, and the visualization diagram, which was stuffed with rich details, was like a sandcastle piled up by the seashore. It collapsed in such a manner, scattering countless streams of silver-white light into the void. Holy crap! Luo Nan's mind instinctively tightened. But before his nervous emotions could surge, his clairvoyance mind was filled with thousands of stars of varying brightness and darkness. That's right. The conceptual combination of points, lines, and planes suddenly transformed into thousands of stars. They were arranged and spread out, transforming into a group of resplendent constellations. They mutually referred to their corresponding structures. Looking at them as a whole, there were still traces of the rules of a tetrahedron, an inscribed sphere, and an outer scribed sphere. Luo Nan stared blankly for a moment. His visualization diagram changed from a conceptual geometric figure to a more substantial star arrangement and constellation structure. Wasn't this a life sketch? This sort of situation was very similar to the situation when he used clairvoyance with Driver Chin yesterday. Luo Nan wanted to bite his finger. His mind was filled with confusion, absent-mindedness, and excitement. The construction of his self-created life sketch had completely blasted apart the barrier of laws between the format pyramid and the living starry sky. It was like an exquisite mathematical transformation. The two unrelated domains were drawn under the same rule, expanding and enriching its contents a step further. Countless details that could be researched were added. From this point of view, his attempts had just begun, but he had already made an exciting breakthrough. But on the other hand, the dissimulation and decomposition of his visualization diagram had accompanied him for many years. The impact was real. So much so that he had to mentally prepare himself. Well, for example, the constellations in the sky. They were never diagrams of light connected to lines. Instead, they were the outlines of the human imagination. They were the reflections of a specific culture. They were the products of a high degree of representation. Perhaps this reasoning could be applied to the format pyramid. Luo Nan was suddenly stupefied. A certain question emerged from nothing, invading his thoughts. Was the object of his grandfather's formatting theory research back in the day an abstract concept? Or was it a concrete phenomenon? He chose the latter. It was impossible for purely abstract and generalized symbols to develop rich connotations without concrete and detailed phenomena to support them. Even if they did, it would be a dreamlike fantasy. In other words, Luo Nan picked up the brown notebook in his hand and flipped to the title page. He stared directly at the concise lines of the diagram, but what appeared before his eyes was clearly the deep and vast starry sky. Chapter 367. The starry sky on the title page was obviously just an illusion, but the changes in the format pyramid were real. Luo Nan couldn't sit still on the bed. He got up and circled around the bed. He had an intense premonition. He had studied formatting theory for over 5 years. Perhaps it was only now that he truly touched upon the threshold of his grandfather's core research. What should I do next? What should I do next? Luo Nan's mind was originally quite clear. He had made preparations for today's closed-door training to tackle difficult problems. But he never expected that his beginning would go so smoothly. It went so smoothly that he lost control. After the format pyramid transformed into a star atlas, all of his previous plans were completely nullified. He needed to sort out a general train of thought based on his new structure. But the true problem was that it wasn't that he had too few ideas. It was that he had too many. He threw himself onto the bed and picked up his split-page notebook. He wrote and drew in a venting manner. Soon, another 6 or 7 blank pages were filled with words, diagrams, and symbols. And there were still endless impulses that tried to jump out from his brain. Luo Nan never thought that he would be stuffed to death by inspiration one day. It was already 11:30 by the time he recovered from his work of memorizing inspiration. The AI butler followed the designed program and made lunch. It invited the only diner in the house to the table. Luo Nan had been evaporating his brain power for the entire morning. His consumption was extraordinary. His instincts began to alarm him. He simply picked up his notebook and went downstairs. He was prepared to continue pondering and writing during his meal. He would not waste time. Luo Nan absent-mindedly ate a few mouthfuls of food, but he wrote and drew half a page of words and symbols. He didn't feel that there was anything wrong with this. He could even continue doing this at the dining table. Another preset reminder came at this time. It's time for the afternoon class. Sweat it out, young man. The hexier vibrated. Shui Lei's thick voice was mixed with stifled laughter. It was exceptionally comical. This was a reminder he had recorded a few days ago when he had nothing better to do. It was specifically set up to control his work and rest time. Gym Master Xiu's teachings were intrinsically very rigorous. He paid the most attention to habits and tempo. He believed that good cultivation habits and efficient tempo were the foundation for achieving martial accomplishments. This was especially true after Luo Nan achieved success in the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. The demands on his side were even higher. Aside from unavoidable circumstances or extremely special circumstances, Luo Nan's morning classes, evening classes, and afternoon classes were all unshakable. Luo Nan couldn't be lazy. Shui Lei was a good friend, and at the same time, he was the most serious and inflexible supervisor. After over a dozen days of strict control, Luo Nan had already formed an initial cultivation rhythm under the external supervision and internal urging. And because of the true feedback from the internal refinement technique, he would be a bit unaccustomed to messing up his rhythm. Luo Nan looked at his watch and struggled a few times in his mind. In the end, he closed his eyes and pushed his notebook to the side. He sped up his eating speed. The benefits of coming in contact with the mouth and tongue acupoint yesterday were also evident. His digestive tract's ability to decompose water grains and transform essence qi had improved significantly. Luo Nan vaguely felt that what he was eating wasn't a tasteless, nutritious meal. Instead, it was strands of essence energy that seeped into his body. The essence energy endlessly circulated throughout his body as he ate, making up for his lack of energy. The progress is excellent, and the vital energy in the 5 viscera is stable. There's no obvious imbalance. According to Gym Master Shio's words, the root receptacle is thick and the foundation is firm. It's enough to bear. Hiss. Luo Nan suddenly realized something. He nearly stabbed his chopsticks into his nostrils as he subconsciously ate his food. He couldn't care less about his sorry state. His mind spun. The progress of the body gear is under Gym Master Shio's control. Although it's still weaker than the God gear, it's solid with every step. The so-called body is like a mountain, densely planted with thick soil. It's not bad at all. In comparison, the God gear driven by formatting theory is advancing like a hurricane. The growth is out of control, and it's already quite troublesome. If I were to be urged by a flash of inspiration and erupt a second time, would I still want this little life of mine? Luo Nan's back was drenched in sweat when he thought of this. He flipped through his notebook once more, and he immediately crossed out all the radical and bold plans. Then he searched for the relatively conservative plans that advanced step by step and carefully pondered over them. That's right. My root receptacle isn't thick in the research of formatting theory. My root nature is unclear, and my root trigger is advanced. I need to carefully sculpt and solidify my foundation before I make any plans. In this way, the idea of turning sketch into sketch is quite appropriate. Luo Nan slapped the table and made up his mind. He poured the food into his mouth in a few mouthfuls, tidied up a bit, and went upstairs for his afternoon class. Luo Nan performed a round of cultivation. The vital energy of his 5 viscera circulated, and the light trembled of his muscles, skin, and flesh. Luo Nan very naturally captured a moment of calmness. He took advantage of this moment to switch to clairvoyance towards the living starry sky. He began his afternoon research. Compared to the flashes of inspiration and the successive bursts of intensity in the morning, his mind was set in the afternoon. His state of mind was much calmer. He just quietly observed this marvelous and gorgeous starry sky. However, he didn't use the logic of formatting theory. Instead, he used the eyes of a painter. Luo Nan had first pondered over the drawing method of life sketches. It was a time of great danger. The argument was made in haste, and time was tight. He exhausted all of his accumulated knowledge at the time, the out-of-body experience, the pattern and rhythm of soul breathing, the understanding of configuration, the operational structure of energy and information. This included his many years of sketching skills, his experience in drawing thousands upon thousands of sketches, and his keen grasp of a character's characteristics. Luo Nan was able to integrate super complex elements to complete such a magnificent masterpiece. It was enough to be proud of. But from the harshest point of view, there was always a difference in judging standards between a rushed work and a meticulous work. In the end, a life sketch was just a sketch. It was a rough impression captured through the use of sketching techniques. Composition, proportion, structure, and all sorts of details were far from perfect. Needless to say, Luo Nan was still lacking far too much at the time. He didn't have the ability to bear the burden. He didn't have the insight and experience. But now, through learning from Gym Master Shio, cramming in the basic knowledge of the inner world, and practicing the coupling effects of the God gear and the body gear, Luo Nan patched up one flaw after another. He was like a young painter who had achieved minor success in his craft. Luo Nan turned his head and looked at the draft he first practiced with. It was too horrible to look at, but he knew where the flaws were and how to fix them. The overall order of the living starry sky existed, but the precision of the diagram was lacking. The image was large and impractical. It had already formed a basic mold, but there was practically no room for refinement. If Luo Nan wanted to fix it, he would have to transform the star atlas into the format pyramid and the star atlas into reality. These were his directions. Luo Nan slowly adjusted his breathing. The starry sky pieced together from the life sketches was like a newly completed composition. A draft of the structure was just waiting for him to use the tip of his brush to outline even more exquisite layers of light and shade, to reveal even more crucial details. Chapter 368. Luo Nan decided on a preliminary direction, but he wasn't in a hurry to get started. Just like a qualified painter, Luo Nan would never hastily put his brush to work. What he faced was not a blank piece of paper, but a deep and complex starry sky. He flipped through the split-page notebook in his hand, found a blank page, and wrote solemnly with a pen, "The first rule begins with me. Push yourself to others." Looking at the current situation, the easiest and smoothest choice to correct the life sketch was external clairvoyance. Driver Chin was a good example. At that level, the answer was already laid out before his eyes. But Luo Nan was fully aware that this was not enough. Without the link of self-reference, it would be hard to estimate what kind of flaws would exist in the work. The first version of the life sketch was limited by Luo Nan's level of understanding at the time. It practically lost the space for further refinement. Luo Nan needed to take this as a warning. But it must be known that self-reflection had always been a difficult part of cultivation. It was said that the most important thing was to know oneself. Gym Master Xiao had emphasized this last night with similar words, and Luo Nan had said early on that he wasn't good at self-portraits. These were not words of modesty. Of course, looking at it from another angle, high consumption often represented high returns. Although this method was difficult, it was a process of defining principles and standards. Only by polishing oneself would one be able to reflect external objects more clearly. The essence of the root receptacle, root nature, and root trigger subdivision techniques taught by Gym Master Xiao were here. Luo Nan chose a path that was difficult at first, then easy at the end. He needed to climb the steepest peak. Only in this way could he solidify his foundation and avoid the fatal danger of formatting theory's uncontrollable growth. Luo Nan paused for a moment, then wrote another line, "The second rule, observation comes first." Multidimensional reproduction. Luo Nan used his drawing techniques to take a picture of the living starry sky. Whether it was sketching or sketching, neither was a skill that relied on imagination. He needed to have a real object of observation. There was nothing much to say. Luo Nan's object of observation was himself. This was not a simple drawing in a mirror. Instead, he needed to probe the frame of body and soul. He needed to take the form and the soul, and he needed to correspond with the form of the star atlas. Most of the various elements involved the mental plane. Thoughts were chaotic, and it was easier said than done to seek them. Perhaps he could only use the God wheel, body wheel, visualization diagram, root receptacle, root nature, root trigger, and other levels of reference to find the greatest common divisor. This would undoubtedly increase Luo Nan's workload. But since he had already given up the easy and chosen the most dangerous path, he didn't mind adding a few more burdens. Luo Nan had some thoughts in his mind after he finished writing these 2 lines. They seemed to be clear, but they weren't. It was hard for them to be fully expressed. He subconsciously twirled his pen, and his other hand lifted up the slightly yellow pages that were smeared with sweat. Luo Nan's gaze streaked across the pages of the notebook one by one. He once again swept his eyes over the dozen or so records of inspiration that contained an enormous amount of information. A moment later, he casually flipped through his previous handwriting. This included a limited number of paintings on paper. If he didn't include the records of his inspirations, although his notebook was thick, there weren't many meaningful things in it. Among them, the most valuable should be the 2 psychic diagrams. The other one was slightly smaller. It was the outline of the wraith sign that he had drawn at school. It was more abstract. As for the other one, even though it had been painted into a mess by the glitter pen, the overall structure and the relevant details were much more specific, but there were also rich symbolic meanings. Yes, that was the prison sketch. It was the diagram that Luo Nan drew when he was imprisoned in the confinement room on ship Lanshan under the catalysis of inspiration. He comprehended the profoundness of "my heart's a prison" from this, truly obtaining extraordinary power. My heart's a prison. Luo Nan's mind suddenly stirred, and his dark thoughts suddenly brightened. Since he was going to revise it, how could he skip over these important points? He immediately moved his pen, forming words on the previous page: third principle, concreteness. Crucial links. The 3 principles on the paper were arranged in order, and the scope of their expressions shrunk one by one. By the time he reached the 3rd principle, he had touched upon the substantive level. He could begin to work on it. My heart's a prison had a special role in Luo Nan's formatting theory research process. If Luo Nan really wanted to make a move, choosing this node was quite suitable. After experiencing the impact and sharpening of many events, Luo Nan now had a relatively clear concept in his heart. My heart's a prison, including formatting theory itself, was essentially the materialization of some sort of compelling rule. It was just like what he sensed from the depths of the mental plane during the incident at Frost River Reality. It was an inconceivable order frame. It was internalized into the structure of a person's body and soul to achieve the final result. Luo Nan found a more appropriate explanation of Eastern metaphysics during the time he was learning from Jim Master Show. One with the world. There was a similar statement in the classical scriptures. It was said, man follows the earth follows the heaven follows the Tao, and the Tao follows nature. All right, he had to admit that the words of Eastern metaphysics were far too rich in meaning. There were often many interpretations. It was very likely that he would be led into a ditch if he were to chew on the words one by one. He simply used this kind of imagery to draw a classical visualization diagram on his notebook. It was a combination of a tetrahedron, an inscribed sphere, and an outer-scribed sphere. The inscribed sphere symbolized the self-format, the outer-scribed sphere symbolized the heaven and earth format, and the tetrahedron in the middle represented the societal format. From the perspective of a pure cultivator, he could temporarily discard the societal format. He could pay more attention to the relationship between the self-format and the heaven and earth format. However, this topic itself was far too large. It didn't conform to the principle of concreteness. Luo Nan simply discarded it. He no longer considered the overall framework. He only sculpted the details. In other words, he gave up on the large topic of how to create the heaven and earth format. He chose the following branch. How to manifest the creation of the heaven and earth format with the self-format. It seemed to be too large. Then he continued to choose. As he went down the levels, Luo Nan's mind became clearer and clearer. The basis for his choice became clearer and clearer. He didn't even need to think about things like fundamental theories. Right now, he had yet to reach the level of explaining phenomena and forming theories. Discovering problems, observing phenomena, collecting data, and then summarizing basic logic was everything he could do for now and for a period of time to come. If he were to start from the basic phenomena, there was a fact that was very clear. What was Luo Nan's most substantial gain after comprehending, my heart's a prison? A low crashing sound rang in the quiet bedroom. The answer was the heavily chained crow. This inconceivable materialized image had helped Luo Nan's soul leave his body. It had subdued the human-faced arachnid's avatar. It had accumulated his first bucket of gold. It had also grabbed Luo Nan and set him on the fast track of uncontrollable development. In that case, why would there be? Oh, let's give up on the why. Right now Luo Nan just wanted to know what sort of shape the heavily chained crow would take after he pulled it out of the format pyramid after the Star Atlas transformation. What sort of changes would occur? This was the first lesson of his observations. Chapter 369. The trembling of the chains spread out on the mental plane, continuing without end. But Luo Nan waited and waited, and the familiar dark chains remained hidden in the core of the living starry sky. Fragments of structure flickered faintly, but Luo Nan was unable to see its concrete form. Hiss. It can't be that after the Star Atlas transformation, all my previous achievements have been reset to zero, right? It was hard for Luo Nan's imagination to run wild when he encountered an unexpected situation. He attempted to enter a deeper level of clairvoyance within the format pyramid Star Atlas, but just as his thoughts stirred, some structure seemed to melt away in the outermost region of the format pyramid. It's the circumscribed circle. The blurry spherical silhouette representing the heaven and earth format was like an inflating bubble. It rapidly expanded until it reached its limit, and then it shattered. The stars flickered as it transformed into the vaster depths of the starry sky. Luo Nan did not know what this phenomenon represented. At the very least, his frame of body and soul, his god gear, and his body gear did not show any adverse reactions. Before his thoughts settled, another layer of structure melted away. It was the tetrahedron representing the social format. The situation was similar to that of the circumscribed circle. The corresponding stars shifted and spread, silently merging into the living starry sky. The two outer layers of structure peeled away and melted away, forming two waves of dazzling fireworks in the living starry sky. They dazzled the eyes for a moment, but they disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Luo Nan's scalp went numb. If the self-format did this again, his frame of body and soul might not be able to hold on, and his mental defenses might collapse first. What he feared had come. The only remaining spherical Star Atlas silhouette in the core region was like a deformed heart amidst Luo Nan's turbulent state of mind. It suddenly expanded and contracted along with Luo Nan's breathing and heartbeat. Then it expanded and contracted again. Luo Nan's attention was practically drawn to this peculiar movement pattern after 5 or 6 consecutive rounds of expansion and contraction. But it was only practically. Luo Nan paid attention to the outline of the self-format from beginning to end. He watched helplessly as it expanded and contracted, beginning to expand inconceivably in this pattern. After a few rounds of expansion and contraction, the spherical Star Atlas had already expanded 3 to 4 times its original size. But its density did not decrease because of the expansion. On the contrary, more and more stars appeared at the very core, gradually forming a dense cluster of stars like a silver sphere. At this point, the format of the tetrahedron, the inscribed circle, and the circumscribed sphere had already become history. Only this brilliant cluster of stars remained. It was like the core of a galaxy formed from billions of stars in the true universe. It sat at the very center of the living starry sky. It's good that it didn't collapse. Luo Nan saw joy in the midst of bitterness. He was just about to go and observe these changes in greater detail when the sound of chains, which he had nearly forgotten, rang out once more from the depths of the brilliant and splendid constellation. It carried a special rhythm that covered every corner of his range of perception. At the same time, an invisible and boundless power accompanied it, spreading throughout the starry sky, distorting the darkness in all directions. The stars in the sky and the millions of life sketches circled around it. Luo Nan was able to clearly sense some sort of obscure law using this incorporeal yet boundless power as a carrier. It was laid out layer by layer, invading practically every single life sketch. A headache and dizziness were Luo Nan's first reactions. This was because the first thing that was impacted by this rule was his general knowledge of the basic spatial order around him. The living starry sky was distorted. The near became far, and the far became near. It was originally at the top, but it suddenly fell to the bottom. The corresponding understanding was completely destroyed. It couldn't go on like this. If a painter could not even understand the most basic concept of space, then his painting would basically be meaningless. Luo Nan hoped to restore his cognitive order. He deeply sensed the living starry sky, using interference power to borrow the material plane to anchor his position anew. For this reason, the God gear and body gear interlocked and rotated. The spiritual light of the eye's orifice transformed into a heart lantern. It drove the energy of his internal organs, and it cast itself towards the boundless starry sky of the mental plane. The results of clairvoyance became more and more subtle. The boundless Milky Way had hundreds and thousands of constellations. They naturally resonated with the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, but they were all different. Some were dim and lightless, while others became especially eye-catching. Whether they were bright or dark had nothing to do with the distance between them in physical space. It was even more chaotic. Luo Nan was already riding a tiger, unable to back down. He could only continue clairvoyance. The heart lantern transformed into a beam of sensing light, making contact with the glittering targets one by one. In an instant, the warped distance of physical space became meaningless. The heart lantern of the eye's orifice was like a beam of light that descended from the heavens. It pierced into the more practical world of reality from the mental plane. Darkness assaulted Luo Nan's face, but it was pierced through in the blink of an eye. The barrier between the material plane and the mental plane was already weak and powerless before Luo Nan. Under the illumination of the heart lantern, the light and shadow of reality interweaved and combined, reflecting a fuzzy figure that gradually grew clearer. And so, Luo Nan saw a majestic black man. His upper body was bare, and he quietly sat cross-legged in a secret room. He was like a statue. His pitch-black skin was covered in a layer of dense beads of sweat, and the distinct lines of his fascia and muscles were trembling. It was clear that he was not as tranquil as he appeared on the surface. Luo Nan recognized this person. He was Black Tiger Bays. He was the vice-commander of the Knights of Equity of the Order of Justice of Xiao City. He was an expert with an extraordinarily powerful fleshly talent. During the incident at Frost River Reality, this fellow was a fierce general under An Wang. He was an enemy of Luo Nan's side, and he fought brilliantly against the ears of truth, Fairchild. But in the end, he was used as a sacrifice by An Wang to release the power of the scales of truth. During the sacrifice, the element of chaos was replaced, causing Baze's foundation to be nearly completely destroyed. In the end, Fairchild, who cherished talent, saved him. Fairchild then requested Luo Nan to lend a helping hand, entering the order frame to maintain his livelihood. Baze relied on Luo Nan's order frame to survive. In this sense, Baze was also one of Luo Nan's believers. But Luo Nan did not have the power to control this wild and unruly fellow. He had no interest in ordering him around. Many times, he nearly forgot about Baze. Luo Nan never expected that his subconscious clairvoyance would select this person. With Luo Nan's current eyesight and knowledge, coupled with the close relationship between the two, the heart lantern of the eye's orifice descended upon Baze's most essential location. His muscles and bones were strong, but his internal organs were weak. His vital energy was scattered. His human frame had collapsed. Only by following the order frame bestowed upon him could he survive. Baze was still in the recovery period. Even though Luo Nan had given him the support of the order frame, Luo Nan only understood half of it at the time. there were many areas where the information was fuzzy. The relevant adjustments and adaptations were a large project. Luo Nan could feel Bae's hardships and impatience, but there was even more tenacity and callousness. Perhaps Bae had paid attention to the heart lantern of the eye's orifice for too long, but Bae seemed to sense something. His eyelids trembled slightly, and he immediately opened them. Luo Nan could see that Bae's thick lips were slightly curled up. There was a bit of ridicule in his eyes, but it was unknown which side he was referring to. In the next moment, Bae raised his arms and raised his head. He assumed a strange pious posture, as if he wanted to embrace the holiness of the void. Chapter 370. Oh, this wild and unruly fellow. Luo Nan didn't go so far as to consider himself a god. He wouldn't lose his bearings just because of a few words from Bae. The light of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice pointed directly at Bae's essence. Luo Nan naturally used the division technique he had just learned from Gym Master Show. Yes, there was also the relevant information that Fairchild had told him before he left. Luo Nan had a general judgment of Bae. This fellow pursued power without end. There was only power in his eyes. He didn't care about being restricted at all, especially when it came to the so-called gods, doctrines, and other illusory matters. The root receptacle could be remolded. The root nature could be controlled. The root trigger was appropriate. It seemed like it could be done. What Luo Nan lacked the most right now was observation and verification. His thoughts spun in a circle, and the beam of light from the heart lantern of the eye's orifice dropped down, piercing between Bae's eyebrows. It was at this moment that Luo Nan realized with horror that the sound of chains under the living starry sky grew clearer. The incorporeal and boundless power merged with the beam of light from the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. It ignored the distance between space and itself as it pierced into Bae's body. The interference power of the heart lantern was not worth mentioning in front of a powerful B-rank. However, the marvelous power of distortion it carried was instantly displayed on Bae's body. Bae's reaction was huge. His cheeks contorted, and the muscles of his body violently twitched. Even so, Bae opened his mouth to reveal an ugly and unbridled smile. Bang! The hard bed beneath Bae inexplicably split open. Dust flew everywhere. He stood up and landed on the ground. He staggered a bit, but he still maintained a posture of stretching out his arms and raising his head. He looked more like a fanatic than anyone else. In reality, this fellow was just excited. He only believed in power, power that belonged to him. Bae's foundation had been corroded by the chaos element, and he had been repeatedly tortured by the half-baked rule that Luo Nan had given him. He was at the weakest point of his life. His internal organs, muscles, bones, skin, and flesh were only in shape. His functions were scattered. But under the illumination of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, the marvelous power of distortion of the living starry sky poured in. The power of distortion represented some sort of hidden and powerful rule of order. Bae didn't lack anything. He just lacked a power of order that could integrate the functions of his chaotic body. So he celebrated the internalization of the rule. The rule itself was a set of chains and fences that were difficult to break free from. As long as there was power, anything was possible. To others, this sort of order and rules was a prison, but to Bae, it was the toughest backbone. It was the foundation and guarantee that he could achieve his goals. Bae staggered 2 or 3 steps before he managed to steady himself. His eyes were ferocious and glowed with a green light. After holding back for more than 20 days, this guy was like a hungry beast, looking for food in the wilderness. His hunting ground was the big city outside. In the next moment, the iron door of the quiet room, along with the door frame, was kicked off the wall and flipped over. The members of the Order of Justice, who were responsible for taking care of him and monitoring him in passing, were all dumbstruck. Baze strode forward and raised his hands high at the same time. He shouted at the ceiling, or at the higher realms, in a pious and crazed manner. "Praise you!" Evidently, he was quite satisfied with the formless yet powerful rules of order. He felt that the power he had gathered at his current stage was worth the price he paid. The Order of Justice of Xia City was undoubtedly at its weakest right now. After Baze reconstructed the frame of his soul, he recovered most of his strength to its peak state. Even First Ablatum Jing Shao, who was temporarily in charge of the Order of Justice, didn't have the guts to stop him. He could only let Baze swagger away. It seemed like he had done something wrong. Luo Nan watched Baze laugh loudly as he walked out. He felt an inexplicable sense of guilt. He shook his head, leaving a portion of his mind as a precaution. Then he continued his journey of clairvoyance with the heart's lantern. In the end, a weirdo like Baze was just an exception. The sky gradually darkened, and the night world of Xia City was rapidly recovering its vitality. In a dimly lit alleyway, a drunk woman was yelling in a language that no one could understand. She tore off her denim jacket and covered her forehead with it. She tried to block the invisible beam of light, to block the binding that came at the same time that terrified her even more. Of course, everything was futile. The drunk woman cursed loudly. She poured the remaining alcohol in the bottle onto her head. The alcohol flowed down her hair and dripped onto her tender shoulders, soaking her sexy, tight-fitting chest. This sort of action was unable to sober her up. The drunk woman staggered out of the alleyway, but she ran into a few mischievous hoodlums. In the next moment, the empty bottle of alcohol exploded on the heads of this group of blind fools. Luo Nan smiled wryly, and the heart's lantern spun once more. This time, the heart's lantern moved over 100 kilometers away. It was already outside the main city district of Xia City. The beam of light from the heart's lantern descended, and the specter that was shuttling through the void suddenly came to a stop. The heavily chained crow that was pulled out from the depths of the mental plane collapsed, but the incorporeal binding and pressure that followed caused the specter to instinctively tremble all the more. For a time, it didn't budge no matter how the person in charge of grazing urged it. The heart's lantern illuminated them one by one, and Luo Nan saw ink let out a coarse squawk. It ignored the restlessness of its own kind and the curses of the residents. It flew up and circled in the night sky. Luo Nan also saw Xie Junping, who was at a certain religious site. He raised his head to look all around, but he was at a loss. There was also another person. Her slender body lay quietly on a sickbed. Her eyelids moved slightly, but she never opened them. Correspondingly, a lone star that had been hidden for a long time streaked across the living starry sky. It circled half a circle before fading away once more. Everything returned to tranquility. Luo Nan looked around, and the glow of the heart's lantern grew brighter. It reflected into his heart, causing Luo Nan to suddenly come to a realization. The living starry sky was warping, but he was actually quite familiar with the order that appeared within the warping. He was even more familiar with it than the multiple explanations of the spatial order of modern physics. He lowered his head to look at the notebook in his hand. There was the classic visualization diagram that he had just drawn. Of course, there was also the title page of his grandfather's notebook, the general outline of formatting theory. The structure of a tetrahedron, inscribed sphere, and circumscribed sphere. If it weren't for this intuitive and concise diagram structure and the corresponding theory as a prerequisite, Luo Nan would probably have been lost within the bizarre laws of the living starry sky. But now he was very clear that the warping of the living starry sky was not some new toy. Instead, it was with him as the core. It was driven by him, warped by him, and divided into levels. The distance of the millions upon millions of life sketches was not calculated based on spatial distance. Instead, it was calculated based on their usefulness to him. They formed many levels, and they could be named: student, employee, pilot, clergyman, politician. Yes, the intuitive structure of the Star Atlas format pyramid had melted away, but it was seamlessly integrated into the structure of the living starry sky. Its rules were no longer like geometric diagrams. After undergoing a high level of generalization, they appeared simple and intuitive. Instead, they were hidden deep within the living starry sky, appearing in an objective and subtle form. Perhaps Luo Nan was just a naive and clumsy student when faced with the boundless and majestic living starry sky, but he had long since obtained a standard answer. Chapter 371. Once again, Luo Nan discovered that his train of thought had run too far. What he wanted to do at first was just to observe the heavily chained crow. But who would have thought that this toy would undergo a phaseless transformation the moment he made contact with it? It transformed into an incorporeal power that enveloped the living starry sky. It naturally guided him to the level of "my heart's a prison." The range expanded in an instant, and the relevant connections became even more complicated. Most people would not be able to separate themselves. Looking at the effects of the self format on the living starry sky, how could one clearly distinguish between inside and outside? Right now, only the core of the dense cluster of stars still maintained the outline of the self format. It could correspond with the classical visualization diagram. As for the societal format, the tetrahedron was already old news. This toy could be said to encompass the entire living starry sky. In any case, from the concept of formatting theory, the societal format was centered around the self. It formed a social structure that could be used by the self. There was no problem with this judgment, given the strength of the current distortion of the living starry sky. Just these 2 points encompassed everything that Luo Nan could currently observe with clairvoyance. Even so, there was still no place for the heaven and earth format. If Luo Nan still wanted to observe the heavily chained crow in this situation, he would be under the suspicion of not turning back until he hit a brick wall. Luo Nan pondered that he could set a slightly broader target for his observation. He still remembered that half a month ago, he had received Gym Master Xiu's guidance in the Daoguan. He had entered a deep meditative state and had seen the internal structure of the self format. He only remembered that the chains were crisscrossing, dense like a spiderweb, mysterious and unfathomable. Would such a situation change after the heavily chained crow mutated and became illusory? Luo Nan was even more afraid that he would do something else with this thought. He no longer hesitated, and the light of the heart lantern changed direction. This time, his telepathic thought successfully penetrated the dense cluster of stars. They collided head-on with the brilliant and powerful light that was like the radiance of a myriad of stars. Fortunately, such a powerful light only flashed on the mental plane. The heart lantern of the eye's orifice swayed slightly, automatically adjusting its interference strength and changing the coupling method. This wave of powerful light dissipated into nothingness. Luo Nan had once heard Gym Master Xiu say that the heart lantern of the eye's orifice was the first of the 9 orifices and 6 roots in the act of introspection. After all, everyone was used to using their eyes to observe. Viewing the scenery and taking images was the most suitable habit. Especially since Luo Nan had mixed in the marvelous coupling effect. The mental plane and the material plane interfered effectively. It was like a gentle breeze and faint light. No matter how deep and indistinct the land was, it could be seen. It could be touched. The corresponding information was much more abundant. Through the effective integration of the consciousness, Luo Nan felt as if he was immersed in the scene. At this moment, it was as if Luo Nan had crashed into the center of a galaxy. It was as if he was surrounded by the twinkling stars of a high-density stellar group. It seemed to be near yet far, and it surrounded him from all directions. On the other hand, it was like he'd encountered an enormous black hole at the forefront of his thoughts. It was dark and deep, and it intended to completely swallow his mind. It was indeed different from the last deep meditation experience. Luo Nan's mind went straight to the depths of the black hole. The heart lantern of the eye's orifice pierced through the gloom, illuminating the deep space below. Wow, it's not easy. Luo Nan was a bit surprised. The clairvoyant scene before his eyes overlapped with the scene in his memories to a large extent. Formatting theory's star atlas transformation was so intense, but the core area of the self-format still maintained its basic structure. It manifested as a bottomless pit of deep space. Endless dark chains crisscrossed and weaved together, forming a complex and dense structure. Of course, the details had changed quite a bit. The last time Luo Nan's thoughts entered, the space was dark and misty. It was as if it were a black prison constructed by a demonic god. All hope was trapped, and it possessed an unshakable dignity of deep silence. Back then, he had gathered all the vital energy in his body with great difficulty. He had wanted to feed the soul flame in the depths of the prison, but it had been sucked dry by the great net of chains. In the end, only a few pitiful strands remained, and they trickled down. This was why Gym Master Xiao commented that Luo Nan couldn't use his skills on himself. Gym Master Xiao even said that Luo Nan could absorb external techniques. This was what Gym Master Xiao meant. However, many days had passed, and the situation was vastly different. Luo Nan had built his foundation through internal refinement. He had achieved success in the eye's orifice, and he had comprehended the coupling technique. The god gear and body gear meshed and revolved, and the interference between the mental and material planes deepened layer by layer. Every step of progress was clear and real. Luo Nan could see that the stability of the deep space seemed to be wavering a bit. From time to time, subtle explosions would transmit through, causing the tens of thousands of chains to rattle. Upon closer inspection, one could see some structural changes and reorganization. If one were to insist on saying that these unforeseen events were affected by the star atlas transformation, then it would be very hard to find a similar explanation for the increase in brightness and temperature of the deep black prison. The heart lantern of the eye's orifice took a look within itself. Luo Nan's thoughts did not need to dive too deep. He could clearly see the halo of light at the bottom layer through the many layers of chain structure. There was also a bit of heat that rose up, closely intersecting with the vital energy that constantly seeped in. Looking down a bit further, the soul flame could be seen within the net of chains. It was extremely lively. Especially when the beam of light from the heart lantern fell down. The energies of the two sides connected, and the soul flame became a bit crazed. It exploded and ignited, and the tail of flames soared. It broke through the lowest layer of the net of chains and was about to burn to the middle section. Luo Nan could vaguely see that the lowest layer of chains had broken. Half of the chain hung down from the tightly woven net of chains. It lay low by the side of the soul flame, receiving an even more intense calcination. There was a great sign of mutation. Wonderful. Truly wonderful. Luo Nan already had a general confirmation. If the star atlas transformation of the format pyramid was said to be the embodiment of formatting theory's external influence and method of use, then this black prison was the embodiment of his level of control and manipulation over formatting theory. In the past, he could only be said to be a user of formatting theory. He was like a driver, a jailer. He had to act strictly according to the rules drawn by formatting theory. But the current situation was clearly reflected. No matter what sort of changes the star atlas transformation of the format pyramid brought, formatting theory, this external technique, was suppressing Luo Nan's core strength. It was shaking, and Luo Nan began to obtain more and more autonomy. His progress was without a doubt. Luo Nan couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. What would happen if the soul flame completely covered this dark prison, completely incinerating these thousands upon thousands of dark chains? What sort of situation would that be? Luo Nan let out a long breath. He felt that he had gained a great deal, so he temporarily stopped his internal clairvoyance. He drew a perfect end to today's closed-door training. It was already late. His aunt and uncle would probably be back soon. It would not be good to hole up in his room any longer. Luo Nan's body fell back, and he stretched his back on the bed. He moved his muscles and bones a bit, relieving the strain of sitting for a long time. But a certain feeling collided with his mind just as he unfolded his arms. It caused his body to freeze on the spot. His soul strength seemed to have grown again. It was explosive. Chapter 372. What the hell? Luo Nan really did jump out of bed. His head instantly swelled up. This didn't make sense. He didn't have an out-of-body state. He didn't sense the wraith sign hunting. He didn't do anything else. Fine, he did quite a few things. But what did these things have to do with the explosive increase in soul strength? He immediately restrained his thoughts and returned to a more realistic plane. He observed the coupling of the god and body gears. The water level of the vast iceberg ocean continued to rise. It showed no signs of stopping. He had already jumped out of the mental plane. Was it still not over? Could it be that the "my heart's a prison" mode created vampires? Why? Fine. Why again? Luo Nan calmed his mind and tossed aside the relevant questions. He helplessly returned to the mental plane. He concentrated his mind and searched for the crux of the problem. The formatting theory system had completely merged with the living starry sky. Luo Nan also knew the standard answer in advance. He understood the relevant operating principles. Many things appeared especially intuitive. Without the tangible chains, the formatting theory system that covered the starry sky turned into an incorporeal prison. Luo Nan changed the locking mode of the chains, but the prison was simply wiped out in one go. Under the constraints of the incorporeal laws, the various living beings under the starry sky more or less reacted to Luo Nan. The vast majority of them had relatively small effects, but they could accumulate and naturally form a scale. Looking at it from this angle, Luo Nan suddenly had a hypothesis. It was just a hypothesis. The reason for the uncontrollable growth of soul strength. From the current state of the living starry sky, a complete formatting theory system was not just Luo Nan's single-person mode. It encompassed the vast structure of all living beings within the range of his perception. It was like a planetary system. Luo Nan was the sun at the center of the system. He possessed the greatest mass. He formed a gravitational force that attracted the other celestial bodies in the vast starry sky to revolve around him. A few of his believers interacted with him to a deeper degree. They were the planets, asteroids, comets, and so on of the system. The vast majority of people interacted with him to a very shallow degree. They were far away from him. They didn't even belong to this star system, but they more or less had a connection with him. If it was just a planetary system, then so be it. But there were many more links in the interaction between people. Using coupling theory to explain, the formatting theory system was composed of many gears, big and small, inside and outside, pieced together. Under the strict system of principles, they were all one, forming an exquisite internal structure. Each level, each rank, each group, each distinction. They interlocked with each other to form an exquisite transmission. In the end, all rivers converged to the core of the formatting theory system, which was Luo Nan's body. On a deeper level, the mode where multiple gears and gear sets worked together was like a gigantic machine that distorted the void. With it as the core, energy and raw materials were collected from various levels, and with that as the foundation, more and more soul power was produced. The function of this production line was too powerful, and there was no limit to it. It continued to produce until there was a relative overcapacity and an economic crisis occurred. Right now Luo Nan was facing a crisis of relative excess. Wasn't it good to have more soul energy? Of course it was good, but please give him the physique of an extraordinary first. Only then would he be able to completely digest and make use of it. What extraordinary physique! Of course, it was just wishful thinking, but since he didn't have it, it meant that he didn't have enough purchasing power. Even if he really needed it, he couldn't afford it. Even if they gritted their teeth and took out a loan to buy it, the long-term pressure of the interest would be enough to crush them. When production and consumption were out of balance, the crisis would naturally come. Luo Nan's brain began to go out of control at this point. He couldn't avoid letting his imagination run wild. He felt that he was like a factory owner who couldn't find a market, a clumsy capitalist. If the excess products could be dumped into a river or thrown into an incinerator like milk, he would gladly do it. The problem was that he couldn't even find a channel that could carry them. The void depository of the external neuron was once a deep lake, but now it was filled to the brim. As for a furnace that could incinerate soul power, it would be more refreshing to just admit that it was a hole in his brain. Luo Nan began to circle around the bed, but he couldn't completely shake off the influence of his brain. Of course, he didn't really want to find an incinerator. He just wanted to walk along the line of an economic crisis. With his newly acquired knowledge of mechanical design, he managed to come up with a strange idea. He should have intervened. A smart factory owner could completely change the function of the production line in a situation where he had sufficient capital. He could produce new products and open up new markets, even if he had to consume a bit more. TSK. It was said that he was purely observing, but in the end, he broke the rules again. But this idea that suddenly popped up was far too wonderful. He couldn't help but put in mental effort. He pondered over it. Actually, he didn't need to remodel the entire production line. He just needed to add one more link. He just needed to continuously consume the products of the work department. Burn and refine essence. This was Luo Nan's first thought. Jim Master Shio once said that this sort of refinement of essence into energy required the participation of the mind. In turn, it tempered the mind and increased its level. This was a refining process of soul power. But there were too many things to pay attention to in this course, especially when it was nearing completion. Jade gives birth to amethyst smoke was incessantly burned and refined from day to night. The essence had long since been boiled dry, and one would go berserk. Then what should he burn? Perhaps Luo Nan was affected by the hole in his brain that was the incinerator, but he was more interested in burning and refining. Suddenly, there was a muffled thud. Luo Nan kicked the lower edge of the large bed frame. He didn't care about the pain. He vented all his strength into smacking the bed. Burn and refine the external neuron. The so-called reversal of true energy used the body gear as the lead to drive the God gear. With the addition of interference effects, it could completely consume soul power. And looking at it from this angle, the body gear was like fire. The external neuron, which possessed the hollow depository, did not store soul power. It stored a lake of crude oil. Wouldn't it be possible to find something by setting a fire on it? Hold on. Only now did Luo Nan have the time to hiss in pain. He rubbed his toes. The pain brought him a sense of crisis. He had to admit that this idea was too rash. There were no actual phenomena or data to support it. A single mishap would lead to an unsalvageable situation. He needed to do a few experiments and gather some data before making a decision. After all, the external neuron was not a part of his body. No one knew what would happen if it was burned and refined for an extended period of time. In this way, the production line transformation could not be carried out for a while. It was more practical to pour milk. How could he waste it? Consume it. Luo Nan scratched his head. The pain in his toes had weakened a bit. He sat back on the bed and subconsciously flipped through his notebook. He wanted to find inspiration to solve this problem. But unfortunately, inspiration was a thing. It would always appear when there were too many restrictive conditions. In the end, it was hard for his imagination to solve practical problems. Chapter 373. His fingers paused, revealing 2 pieces of greenish-yellow paper sandwiched between the split pages of the notebook. They looked rough, but strangely glossy. This was a paper talisman given to him by Papercut. It was a top-quality product personally made by the famous psychic of the branch, Mr. Gao. Luo Nan used it to practice his soul strength activation techniques, strengthening the effects of his interference power. Last week at Ocean Sky Cloud City, the paper dolls he made had also made a contribution. Originally, this was a good method of pouring milk. Back then, Luo Nan had relied on this method to consume his excess soul strength and reduce the pressure on his body. But now that Luo Nan had comprehended the technique of coupling, the framework of the God gear and the body gear had taken shape. He no longer had a bottleneck in terms of interference power. He could use a fraction of his strength to achieve 100% of his previous effectiveness. He could stop using up energy. At present, he had not given up on this technique. He would always find time to practice it. Now, there were only 2 pieces of talisman paper left. There were more than 20 little paper men sandwiched between the 2 pieces of talisman paper. Little paper men fluttered in the air with a puff of air. They scattered on the bed and on the floor. But just as they touched the ground, they were like live monkeys. They grabbed the corners of Luo Nan's clothes and cuffs, fighting to be the first to jump back. Some simply climbed all the way to Luo Nan's head and shoulders, treating Luo Nan like a monkey mountain. What paper man? It was clearly a paper monkey. Luo Nan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shook his shoulders and shook his head, removing the group of paper monkeys. The heart monkey technique that Papercut had imparted to him was still too troublesome. Later on, Luo Nan wanted to learn the equestrian technique from Papercut. It was said that it had the power of armored horses in novels. It could carry heavy loads and soar over land. It could be said to have a miraculous effect. Luo Nan's anxious mood was alleviated quite a bit with this. Previously, he was just depressed by the recurrence of his illness and lost his composure. Now that he thought about it, he had the foundation of the coupling technique and was no longer in a dilemma. So what if his soul power increased again? If opening the eyes orifice wasn't enough, he could open the mouth and tongue orifice. If that didn't work, he could open the ears orifice, life orifice, and death orifice. Wouldn't it be balanced again? Patting his cheeks, he put away the paper monkeys and put them back into the book, taking the opportunity to organize his thoughts. In the end, he sent a message to Papercut through the hex ear. Brother Papercut, do you have a big move for soul force activation? Big move. Papercut was chatting with someone in the tea house outside. He didn't react for a moment when he received the message. It's a very powerful move that consumes a lot of energy. Our method is like casting a spell, preparing a big move in advance. There's no need to panic. Papercut nearly choked when he heard Luo Nan's words. He apologized to the female friend across from him, got up, and went to a corner with no one around. He chuckled and responded, "My dear boss Luo, if I had such a big move, I would have dared to rush to B-rank today. Do you believe me?" Luo Nan was a bit disappointed. Then there's nothing else. Let's not talk about whether or not such a move exists. The key is that there's a limit to how much the talisman paper can hold. Old Gao's paper talismans were the best of the best in the vicinity of Xia City, but when the interference force was increased to a certain degree, it would spontaneously combust. Therefore, a activation style like me has a life of support. I live my days on the spot. Boss Luo, you have the strength but nowhere to use it. You can switch to the control style. You have the talent for it. Papercut had an extremely good temperament. Even though Luo Nan had disturbed his date, he was very patient. He gave Luo Nan an explanation and even gave a suggestion. I told you before that the society has specialized combat machines. They may not be comparable to the Deep Blue Walkers in terms of both internal and external integration, but their power is still outstanding. Relying on your level of interference force after your epiphany, and then learning microcontrol and mechanical principles from old Jai, you can play with this toy to the fullest. Luo Nan grunted twice. Papercut thought that Luo Nan was moved and felt that it was a bit of a pity. After all, there weren't many people like Luo Nan, who could cultivate the heart of the ape technique to spirituality in such a short amount of time. There were very few people interested in the activation style. Now that they lacked an up-and-coming talent, they inevitably became weaker. However, Papercut's mind was clear. He continued to laugh and said, "It just so happens that I have a flywheel arm in my collection. Although it hasn't been sharpened, it is the most basic of combat machines. If you want to get started, you can try it out. I'll bring it over when you have time." Okay. If Brother Papercut isn't busy, then next Monday is fine. Though Luo Nan said this, he wasn't really interested in switching to the control style. This was because this style always made him think of the Deep Blue Walkers. Plus, Papercut's words made it even more awkward. Plus, he didn't really need a big move to protect himself. He just wanted to find a channel to pour milk. Luo Nan was disappointed. He was just about to say a few more polite words and hang up when Papercut became concerned about his recent situation. Headquarters has been quite well behaved lately. It seems that Deputy Secretary General Gong ate some bad luck. He went into closed-door training when he got back. It's okay. The branch has taken good care of me. Then you suddenly want to hold back a big move. Hey, Miss Yuan, what are you doing? I'm sorry. Something urgent suddenly came up. I need to go take care of it. Let's talk later. Okay. Later. The beautiful Miss Yuan didn't even have the patience to listen to Papercut's words even though she said they would talk later. She didn't even have the slightest intention of turning around. She swayed as she walked out of the tea house, quickly disappearing into the stream of people. She at least made a special trip to say something. Papercut sighed. He loosened his collar and walked back to his previous seat. He stretched and relaxed his body, and a smile appeared on his slightly plump face. Brother Papercut. Luo Nan couldn't see the situation over there, but he could feel that something not very harmonious had happened. Moreover, it was most likely related to his call. Am I bothering you? It's nothing. It's nothing. The more beautiful a girl is, the harder it is to coax her. Besides, I just saw that she was pretty. I harbored evil intentions. Where were we? Brother Papercut, since you have something to do, we can talk about it when we meet on Monday. I said it's nothing. Waiter, give me an extra plate of snacks. Papercut's tone was relaxed. He continued to chat with Luo Nan with a beaming smile. If you really feel guilty, then introduce me to a female student from Acumen College. She has to be over 20 years old. I'm afraid I'll turn into a beast if she's too young. Luo Nan stuttered a few times. Even he himself wasn't sure if he should agree or not. Papercut chewed on the snacks in his mouth as he spoke indistinctly. Oh right. Let's talk about a big move. If you really want a big move, you don't need to look for it in the activation class. Open your mind. There are many things under the heavens that are suitable for you. For example, you can pay attention to an honor point mission from headquarters. The serial number is RT-8313. There might be a pleasant surprise there. Headquarters. Luo Nan was instinctively a bit afraid. Papercut could understand, so he eased Luo Nan's mind and said, the mission is hung in headquarters, but its roots are in Arxia City. You'll know when you see it. The Hexier was able to completely achieve telepathic control in this sort of operation. A thought flashed through Luo Nan's mind as he and Papercut spoke, and the interface switched to the official mission release board of the Wilderness Explorer Society. Luo Nan locked onto the relevant information. Chapter 374. Luo Nan scratched his head in his bedroom. He felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Papercut laughed mischievously in the tea house. Do you see that? Her Majesty Empress Wu personally hung it up 3 years ago. The content is to collect soul force samples and analyze their basic properties and production principles. TSK, a big question. Luo Nan let out a sigh. No matter how big the hole in his brain was, he could only keep a respectful distance when encountering this sort of fundamental research that involved the essence of the problem. From this, one could see the foresight and boldness of an extraordinary. Right, 3 years ago, Her Majesty Empress Wu was not an extraordinary. However, Luo Nan didn't understand. What does this have to do with a big move? This is where Her Majesty the Martial Empress is awesome. She wanted to collect the soul force data of the entire world's ability users. Just like collecting fingerprints and DNA information, it was more or less a taboo. Even if the point reward was generous, not many people were willing to do it in the beginning, so the progress was rather slow. Later, she came up with an idea. You can look at attachment 2, the payment agreement for information collection. Luo Nan didn't act according to Papercut's intentions. The familiar feeling grew more and more intense. He couldn't help but think hard. Where in the world have I heard this before? After all, his social circle was very narrow, and he didn't have many choices. Soon, he slapped his thigh. The Martial Emperor's secret technique, subdue the world by force. Papercut laughed again. Aha, you also know that it was Bamboo Pole who taught you. Yes, I have a rough idea. Luo Nan had indeed heard about this matter from the Notes on the Major Characters of the World course. As for why Luo Nan didn't think of Her Majesty Empress Wu for a time, it was because there were far too many marvelous deeds. Bamboo Pole, who taught the class, emphasized the description of many aspects of Luo Nan's character. Though this matter had a great impact, Bamboo Pole only spent a few minutes to explain it. He made the connection, the details, and so on. Then Bamboo Pole treated it as an extended assignment after class, letting Luo Nan do his own homework. Luo Nan was pressed for time, so he didn't really get involved. He passed it by mistake. At present, he only knew that in this event that shook the inner world, Her Majesty the Martial Empress had displayed her inconceivable boldness. On the mission issuance interface, she had publicly imparted an astonishing attack technique, which had instantly ignited the entire inner world. The current research on supernatural powers was still in its early stages, and some of the advanced research results had yet to be disseminated. Most of the ability users in this world were still in an instinctive state of ignorance about how to use their own abilities. Her Majesty Empress Wu grasped the minds of these people, publicizing a profound technique that was extremely suitable for the awakened level. Its allure instantly crushed most of the people's defenses. For a time, cultivating the Martial Emperor's secret technique became common practice. Not to mention the awakened, even the higher-level architects and transcendents practiced and researched it. From that moment on, Her Majesty Empress Wu's fame truly spread throughout the world. Papercut helped Luo Nan enrich the details. Her Majesty Empress Wu spent a large sum of money to build a special data collection network before the release of the Dripping Sword's secret technique. She borrowed the East Wind and spent a mere 2 years to collect over 40,000 effective samples of ability users of all levels. There was a gap of a year in between. At the beginning of this year, she released a technique suitable for architects, or B-rank power users. At present, the number of valid samples has not been calculated, but it should not be too little. I estimate that there should be at least 300 to 500 samples. The number of B-class experts might seem small, but considering the number of B-class experts, the ratio was quite high. This is the 3rd year. Her Majesty Empress Wu has already advanced to become an extraordinary. We are all guessing that this year or next year, it is very likely that she will bring out an even higher level technique. Oh, the extraordinary level. How magnanimous. Luo Nan had to admire her. Yeah. Although this sort of technique became a common commodity once it was released on the internet, it's still quite good to have a technique at your disposal. The more Papercut thought about it, the more reliable he felt it was. Next, he did his best to recommend, Her Majesty Empress Wu's technique is famous for being reliant on control. The same dripping sword can be used by one person to exterminate a powerful enemy like slaughtering a dog, while the other person can't even kill a chicken. There are situations like this. Your spirit enhancement is in the precision direction, I am very confident in your control. Dripping sword. Luo Nan finally opened attachment 2. He looked at the name of the technique displayed inside and muttered to himself for a time. You should learn it first. Her Majesty Empress Wu's techniques are more inclined towards the mental side. The requirements for the fleshly body aren't too high. It just so happens to suit you. I've learned the dripping sword. It really is out of the ordinary. At the very least, it has unexpected effects. As he spoke, Papercut sent over a file through the Hexier. Her Majesty Empress Wu personally wrote the lecture notes for last year's intermediate training class. It has to do with the dripping sword. The introduction is extremely detailed. There are also on-the-spot demonstrations and demonstrations during the lecture. This is a treatment that only our Xia City branch can enjoy. Even a year later, we can sell it for tens of thousands of dollars to the outside world. There are also notes I made. You can take a look. After all, my talent in this field is limited. Thank you, Brother Papercut. Luo Nan knew that these class notes were very secretive things. For Papercut to be able to take them out showed his trust in Luo Nan. Papercut didn't care, this is nothing. I've seen your recent progress. Secretary, his arrangement of classes will involve this step as well. I'm just giving you special treatment ahead of time. Plus, I owe you a favor for the matter with old Zhai. Worker Zhai. Old Zhai is a capable person, but his talent in cultivation is far too lacking. He is always a bit away from awakening, so he can't enjoy some resources. Him being your teacher can be counted in honor points. If you exchange it for resources, your chances of success will increase. It doesn't matter if you succeed or not. You can at least give him a bit of comfort. Luo Nan didn't agree with this, saying, you can't say it like that. Worker Zhai gave me supplementary lessons. He taught me even more. I still need to thank you, Brother Papercut, for finding me such a good teacher. Tisk, it's so sour. Let's not flatter each other. I'll call old Zhai out one day, and everyone can have a good meal. Okay. Luo Nan made a mental note of this. In this way, he would have 2 rounds with Papercut. It didn't matter, but introducing a female student. What a headache. Luo Nan's mind cleared up just as he was about to end the call. He had nearly forgotten his original intention of pouring milk. He mulled over Papercut's description of the dripping sword. It didn't seem like a high-energy consumption skill. Luo Nan hurriedly asked, what about the B-rank technique? Do you have the lecture notes? It's suitable for architects. It's called the heart-searing blade. It's said to be extremely sharp, but I don't recommend that you come into contact with it right now. Papercut downed his already cold tea in one gulp. He began to earnestly lecture Luo Nan, Nanster. There are indeed quite a few people who view you as a B-rank power, but you're still lacking a bit, right? Take a look at the dripping sword first. This technique is extremely amazing. It also highlights the characteristics of Her Majesty Empress Wu's technique. If you feel that you can use it freely, then take a step further, okay? I know. I just want to gather some information in advance. Though Luo Nan said this, he still felt weak in his heart. Chapter 375. Sister Yuan. Luo Nan grew more and more diffident. This sort of action of biting off more than one could chew would most likely not receive Yuan's support. Papercut added, however, if it involves personal understanding and experience, it would be best to find someone who was present at the time of the lecture. It would be even better to impart the teachings of their hearts. There were only a few B-class experts in the branch, and even fewer in the spiritual type. Old Yu, Horned Demon, Old Gao, Mr. Bai. He read out a string of names. Luo Nan found the names familiar. Aren't these the psychics of Xia City? Old Man Yu was one of the Iron Triangle of Xia City. He was known alongside Ouyang Qin and Her Majesty Empress Wu. The centaur was said to be an adventurous madman with a tendency to self-destruct. He wandered in the wilderness every day, looking for excitement. Old Gao was the creator of the paper talisman in Luo Nan's hand. He was a Daoist with an inheritance, and he was half a disciple of Old Yu. As for Mr. Bai, Luo Nan was even more familiar with him. They had fought side by side before, and Mr. Bai had even given Luo Nan a diagnosis and treatment. His daughter was Bai Xinyan, the mysterious medical doctor with a strange stance. He suddenly discovered that the psychics of Xia City were quite peculiar. Excluding Luo Nan, who was half a psychic, there were a total of 4 psychics. Perhaps the ratio wasn't high when compared to over 1,000 ability users, but all of them were of the architect rank. They were B-rank powerhouses. In the entire Xia City branch, how many powerhouses were there at B-rank or higher? There were a total of 14 people on record, which was already one of the best out of the 88 branches in the world. Among them, shamans accounted for nearly a third of them, which was very impressive. Luo Nan was a bit distracted, and Papercut pulled him back. I can help you ask Old Gao. It's just that this fellow is a bit unscrupulous. He might try to rip you off. Sweat, you used to have a large supply of talisman paper, how many of them were taken advantage of? Luo Nan suddenly felt that he really should find an opportunity to give thanks to the teachers who taught him his skills. Luo Nan didn't want Papercut to return to this matter. He thought for a bit and said, maybe we can look for Mr. Bai. The old man seemed to have a good temperament and character. He should be easier to talk to than the profiteer, Mr. Gao. That's right, you've been treated by White Salt for such a long time, so it can be considered a bit of fate. He'll definitely pay attention to you, just don't take the initiative to mention it. I know. Luo Nan understood tacitly. It wasn't news that the father and daughter of the Bai family didn't get along. Wait, why does it sound like you want me to find someone? Luo Nan opened his mouth, but he was speechless. It was his own business, so of course he had to do it himself. However, with his otaku personality, he would feel great pressure even if he took the initiative to contact someone, let alone ask for help. After all, Mr. White was still his senior, and he wasn't that familiar with him. In any case, Luo Nan could no longer let Papercut do this for him. He could only grit his teeth and agree. It was also at this moment that he suddenly thought of something. If every time he went into seclusion to cultivate, he would have to lose control and spend a lot of energy to clean up after himself. Would it be worth it? Mrs. Luo Shuqing was a bit baffled during breakfast the next morning. She kept feeling that something was off with Luo Nan. In the end, he couldn't help but ask, what are you so conflicted about? Oh. Luo Nan tightly stuffed a large amount of meat into his mouth. When he raised his head, he had an innocent expression on his face. Your eyebrows are all knotted, and you still say you're not conflicted. Luo Nan swallowed the slice of meat with great difficulty. He continued to play dumb. Are you conflicted? Oh, my forehead is fighting with the marginal lobes. In the end, Mrs. Luo Shuqing's attainments in psychology were decent. She went around in circles and finally understood. In psychology, the prefrontal cortex represented rationality and self-control, while the marginal lobes represented impulsive emotions. It could also be understood as the struggle between long-term benefits and short-term benefits. Luo Nan was just speaking carelessly, and he shivered. However, his words did contain some true emotions. He didn't go looking for Mr. Bai last night. The reason was that he wasn't familiar with Mr. Bai. It was too late, and he was afraid of disturbing Mr. Bai's rest. To put it bluntly, his otaku cancer flared up. He displayed a fear of interpersonal relationships. He dragged it out as long as he could. He knew how to kill someone he was familiar with, and in the end, he went looking for Secretary He. He learned that the branch's database did indeed have a recording of the high-level seminar back then. However, Luo Nan wasn't able to get his hands on it. He Yuan warned him very bluntly not to bite off more than he could chew. The B-rank technique, heart incineration blade, involved too many elements. Many of them were knowledge unique to architects. Without a solid foundation, forcefully practicing was no good. Essentially speaking, Luo Nan hadn't even reached the standard of an awakened due to the imbalance between his body and soul. This was a problem with the standard. It wouldn't change just because his combat strength was superb. A missile that could explode at any time was indeed more frightening and destructive than a refined rifle. However, the control power needed to be looked at the other way around. Last night, Luo Nan even asked how to pour the milk. Oh no, he asked how to use his ultimate move. In the end, He Yuan saw through his worsening condition of the imbalance between his body and soul. Only after tossing and turning for a while did he avoid the pain of inspection. He didn't get any results in his training that night. It was hard for Luo Nan to avoid feeling emotional. However, he had forgotten that his aunt had been paranoid these past 2 days. She was worried that Luo Nan had stepped into some domain. Luo Shuqing immediately became nervous when he heard his vague and suggestive words. Did that firm come to recruit you again? Luo Nan slapped himself in the face in his mind and cursed his foul mouth. He rushed to ease Luo Shuqing's mind. Nope. I haven't contacted them for the past 2 days. They were just speaking carelessly. It would have been better if he didn't explain. The more he explained, the more Luo Shuqing became suspicious. She put down her bowl and chopsticks, wanting to understand the situation in depth. At this time, Mo Haiheng, who was swiping at the table and reading the newspaper, suddenly jumped out with a sentence. Actually, if there's no danger, you can give it a try. Young people are just trial and error. Only by making mistakes can you gather effective information. He brought out the trial and error theory again, and this time he took it a step further. You can go to their firm and try it out. See if it suits your heart. If you want to do it, then draft up a contract and bring it back for your aunt to help examine it. You're in high school now. Financial independence can be put on the agenda. Luo Shuqing turned to glare angrily at her husband, but she soon understood something. She furrowed her brows in silence. There was one more person who was at a loss. They clearly wanted to get to the bottom of things. Luo Nan knew long ago that his aunt and uncle were worried about the direction of the so-called trial and error theory. He could see through them with a single glance. He couldn't help but feel even more depressed. He groaned in his mind, it's all a misunderstanding. He began to ponder whether or not he should ask Zhang Yingying for help. She should set up a trap and play a two-man show to calm the hearts of these two elders. Breakfast ended hastily amidst the confusion and probing. Today was Sunday, November 4, 2096. The accidental injury in the morning seemed to have given a bad start to the day's schedule. Luo Nan's aunt and uncle, as well as Mo Yen, went out to do their own things after breakfast. Luo Nan continued to stay at home, carelessly observing the star atlas of the format pyramid. He was intimidated by the continuously increasing water level of the vast ocean of icebergs. He dejectedly withdrew from the fixed space, holding his head in distress. He couldn't delve any deeper into the homework related to formatting theory before he found a suitable channel to pour milk. Even the root receptacle, root nature, and root trigger division technique personally taught by the gym master couldn't be considered due to too many connections. As for the internal refinement technique of the 9 orifices and 6 roots, Luo Nan had already mastered it during the morning class. There was no need to superfluously paint a snake with legs. Luo Nan had been at home for an entire day. He needed to do something, right? Luo Nan rolled around on his bed twice. In the end, he had no other choice but to follow Papercut's suggestion. He opened up the mission posting page for soul strength information gathering and flipped through the dripping sword teaching materials that Papercut had sent over. He wanted to see if he could discover anything interesting from it. For the fastest and most error-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 376. It had to be said that Luo Nan's mood was quite high right now. Most of his thoughts last night were on the heart-searing blade, the legendary secret technique of pouring milk. He only skimmed a few glances at the C-rank technique, the dripping sword. He did not sink his heart into it. He only knew that this technique mainly condensed water vapor out of thin air to attack the enemy's weak points. It was a bit like the magicians in fantasy novels, but the sound and light effects were inferior. Right now, Luo Nan wanted to go deep into contact with this technique. He first looked at the original recording on Annex 2 of Headquarters RT-8313 mission. Speaking up to this point, he actually wanted to look at Annex 3 yesterday, but he did not have the authority to read it. He could only look at the summary and the like. Only ability users at the architect rank or above could see the full picture. How infuriating! Luo Nan grinned as he waited for the network to buffer. The demonstration recording on the Annex used the reality level of video and audio storage specifications. Its volume was enormous. Even with the special network form of the Hexier, a period of time was needed for smooth playback. The volume specification corresponded with its value. After all, this was a teaching demonstration for all ability users in the world, and it was done by Her Majesty Empress Wu herself. According to the suggestion of the Hexier's AI assistant, Luo Nan chose the reality mode with the best results. This was the function of the simulator on the 4th level of the psychic wave network. Right now, Luo Nan had already solved the problem of interference power. He could use the related functions without any pressure. He closed his eyes. After the darkness naturally descended, gentle light slowly seeped in. The light gradually deepened and changed. In the end, it formed a scene of interweaving gray and dark red. There were also intersecting noises, wind pressure, the choking smell of the earth, and even the dry sensation of his skin entering at the same time. He was instantly brought to the vast and spacious wilderness. Luo Nan was already used to such simulation guidance. He just felt that the simulator of the psychic wave network was a bit more exquisite than the burner version of Frost River reality. Right now, he was at the entry level of the 9 orifices and 6 roots technique. The stimulation of these nerve cells caused his internal organs, fascia, skin, and flesh to react instinctively. He needed to give himself another hint to make up for the disparity in perception between his mind and fleshly body. Luo Nan raised his head to look into the distance. Right now, he was at the top of a hill. This was the highest point relative to the surrounding environment. The dark red earth beneath their feet was cracked layer by layer, extending endlessly towards the horizon. This was, without a doubt, the wilderness. In the next second, Luo Nan's attention was involuntarily drawn by the bright, sharp, and valiant slender figure in front of him. He suddenly realized who was the main character in this world. Her Majesty Martial Empress. For the time being, only the silhouette of Her Majesty Empress Wu could be seen. She was wearing a tailored hunting suit that was tight at the waist. It was dark red in color and paired with brown boots, which highlighted her long legs and matched her slender figure. What was more eye-catching was the lightweight electromagnetic rifle slung across her shoulder. The body of the rifle was cut off by a simple and low-profile ponytail, but it still reminded everyone that this was a dangerous wasteland. This outfit was similar to the color of the wasteland and could also serve as camouflage. It looked more professional, but it also had a wonderful sense of fashion, forming a very wonderful balance. Well, any man would find similar reasons when facing a stunning beauty. To Her Majesty Empress Wu, that rifle was no different from a bag in a fashionable woman's hand. They were both plastic arts. Luo Nan's imagination ran wild as he tried to move about in reality. The enormous video and audio storage format of reality should have left enough space for interaction. But Her Majesty Empress Wu's image did not respond. Could it be that there were no relevant interaction resources stored? Just as Luo Nan's thoughts spun, Her Majesty Empress Wu suddenly turned around. Her gorgeous, bright, and beautiful face appeared without reservation. It was within Luo Nan's breathing range. Luo Nan actually took a step back. Of course Luo Nan recognized Her Majesty Empress Wu. Though he had never formally met her, Bamboo Pole's notes on the most important people of the world course had photos, videos, and other video materials. Especially for a stunning beauty like Her Majesty Empress Wu. All kinds of materials were even more complete. Luo Nan's impression of Her Majesty Empress Wu was, of course, extremely beautiful. She especially loved to smile. In all kinds of video materials, Her Majesty Empress Wu always revealed a reserved, unrestrained, cordial, mocking, or fierce smile. Her smile infused the already bright and gorgeous image with an even more vivid color. Luo Nan only believed that Bamboo Pole had specially chosen materials during the class. Only later did he find out that Her Majesty Empress Wu had left behind all the video materials ever since she became famous. Whether it was photos or videos, she had never left behind any expressionless moments. Luo Nan felt that it was interesting at first, but it made his hair stand on end when he thought about it. These were Bamboo Pole's original words. At the time, Bamboo Pole spoke as a footnote to Her Majesty Empress Wu's temperamental personality. It left an incomparably deep impression on Luo Nan. Her Majesty Empress Wu in the reality recording was obviously smiling. It was the kind of professional smile that made her seem like a competent host. Oh, no. She was more like a tour guide. In fact, this was a reality experience of travel and adventure. With the support of reality technology, those bold characters could completely greet Her Majesty Empress Wu before them. They could shake hands. They could even say a few flowery words. There shouldn't be any problems. However, Luo Nan shrunk back. He shrunk back in great embarrassment. The beautiful face that was so close at hand gave him a tremendous pressure. Was it an incurable outbreak of otaku cancer? Luo Nan was willing to believe that it was Bamboo Pole's explanation that day that left a shadow in his heart. It was needless to say that Her Majesty Empress Wu was famous for her beauty in her early years. Her appearance could be said to be ostentatiously beautiful. Her facial features were completely flawless, but there was always something out of line between her brows and eyes. Bamboo Pole, who had seen countless beauties, had this to say: this so-called out of line was actually a kind of oppressive force. People could feel an unquestionable dominant force from Her Majesty Empress Wu's smile from time to time. She was charming, and you would be infatuated. She was gentle, and you would be satisfied. She was fierce, and you would tremble. She was callous, and you would be fearful. Any high-level intelligent life form had a relatively clear self-awareness. Their thinking instinctively revolved around themselves. No one wanted to become someone else's prey. But Her Majesty Empress was out-of-line beauty, supported by her boldness, transformed into a sharp weapon that pointed at the weakest part of the human heart. Perhaps Luo Nan was scaring himself. Right now, Luo Nan had a trembling feeling of facing a sharp blade. He only relaxed a bit when he pulled some distance away. Such a reaction hurt Luo Nan's self-esteem. What the hell? If I'm like this when I see a virtual image, won't I immediately kneel when I see the real person? He slapped his cheeks. A wave of rebellious psychology, a common trait at his age, stirred restlessly. He really wanted to use his interactive function to do something, to retaliate. Chapter 377. Our target has arrived. Her Majesty Empress Wu's side profile had slightly parted bangs and a low, fluffy ponytail style. She embellished a full sense of elegance, but the impact was reduced a bit. Compared to her breathtaking appearance, Her Majesty Empress Wu's voice was a bit calmer. It was a bit deeper, and she spoke a bit slower. Her enunciation was especially clear, and her tone fluctuated vividly. Combined with her smile, it made one wonder if there was some hidden meaning behind her words. Luo Nan felt even more nervous. He heaved a sigh of relief and turned his head to look at the foot of the hill. An ugly hairless monster had just appeared. Its shoulder height was definitely more than 2 meters, its body was fat, and it had long fangs. It was shaking its layers of thick skin and flesh as it silently rushed up. It was less than 50 meters away from them. The scene suddenly tensed up. Her Majesty Empress Wu explained unhurriedly, "This is a pleated wild boar. It's a low-level mutant commonly seen in the wilderness. It has practically no research value, but its skin is thick and its blood is long. Its impact force is extraordinary as well. When it's in a group, it's quite irritating." Her Majesty Empress Wu removed the portable electromagnetic rifle from her shoulder as she spoke. She didn't even take aim. She opened fire with one hand, confident and at ease. The metal bullet accurately struck the head of the pleated wild boar, the thinnest part of its skin. It embedded itself deeply, but soon the flesh squirmed and the bullet fell off. Blood flowed like a fountain, smearing its face. The pleated wild boar was a bit dizzy, but it shook its head. It still charged forward courageously, fully verifying the evaluation of its skin being thick and blood being long. Her Majesty Empress Wu's figure didn't move. She continued with a smile, "Pure physical impact isn't that effective. The firearms of the military require a certain degree of concentrated fire in order to be effective. However, as ability users, we can do this." The pleated wild boar's angry eye socket burst with blood just as her voice fell. This enormous mutant let out an extremely disproportionate shriek from its throat. Its body staggered, and it nearly slipped. Luo Nan looked at its left eye socket. A bloody hole had exploded there. It was badly mangled, and one eye was already blind. Luo Nan was baffled. What just happened? He didn't see Her Majesty Empress Wu make any unnecessary movements. The wild boar, which had lost one eye, became extremely manic. Even if there was a problem with the correct location, the speed of the galloping was even faster. It was at this time that an excellent video clip appeared next to Luo Nan in the form of an AR. It replayed the moment just now in slow motion, helping a rookie like Luo Nan to reconstruct the process. Her Majesty Empress Wu gave a synchronized explanation. The virtual screen clearly showed that when the pleated skin wild boar charged, translucent water droplets condensed in midair and pierced through the pupils, causing the fragile eyeballs to explode, but that was all. Her Majesty Empress Wu also said, "I just unleashed a dripping sword, but the effect wasn't too good." The reason why I'm doing this is to show everyone one thing: in practical applications, you shouldn't overestimate its lethality. After all, this is only an awakened level technique. If you don't use it properly, it will make the situation worse. It sounded very reasonable, but was it really not because of a mistake? Luo Nan had yet to walk out from the shadow of losing face. He couldn't help harboring a subtle thought and made malicious guesses. But in the next second, the other eyeball of the pleated wild boar, which was still 20 meters away, exploded. The situation seemed to be similar to last time. The pleated wild boar roared once more, but its roar was cut off halfway. Its thick and sturdy body lost its balance. It simply fell to the ground and slid forward. It lost all kinetic energy when it was around 5 meters away from Her Majesty Empress Wu. All that was left was the instinctive twitching of its limbs. Luo Nan gaped. This time he really didn't understand where the problem lay. At this time, Her Majesty Empress Wu took 2 steps forward. She was like a field researcher. She knelt on one knee next to the pleated wild boar, allowing the dry red earth to stick to her hunting clothes. Then, her slender fingers swiped through the air, and the head of the pleated wild boar that was as hard as iron was cut apart. It was only this inhuman action that made people remember her identity as an extraordinary. Oh, she wasn't one 3 years ago. Luo Nan didn't know how many times he had been stumped by this train of thought. The dissection scene was very bloody, but it helped to restore the truth. It was as if Luo Nan was at the scene. He took 2 steps forward and saw that the brain of the pleated wild boar had completely turned into a paste. Forget a wild boar, even a giant elephant would be cleanly wiped out by this kind of damage. But why was the effect so different between the 2 times? Could it be that she was cheating? Luo Nan sank into malicious conjectures, finding it hard to extricate himself. On the other side, Her Majesty Empress Wu had already given the answer. In terms of destructive power, this is the effect of the water droplet impact, which is enhanced by both sharpening and exploding. And in order to control it to penetrate the eye and enter the brain, there is also the enhancement of guidance. Her Majesty Empress Wu smiled as she explained the key points of this attack technique. As mentioned before, the dripping sword was called a sword, but it was actually an attack technique that interfered with the material plane of the mind. The principle was to use soul strength to form a special circuit, to fully do work, to absorb the water molecules in the atmosphere, to achieve a series of blessings such as sharpening, exploding, amplification, acceleration, guidance, and so on. It was a technique that killed the enemy in an instant. The core circuit structure of the dripping sword technique was known as the condensation ring. Only through this structure could water molecules be rapidly gathered. And on this basis, various effects such as sharpening, amplification, exploding, and so on could be realized. For this reason, soul strength needed to be close to the material plane. It was sculpted and shaped. It didn't matter if it was rough, and it didn't matter if it couldn't be maintained for a long time. The key point was the suddenness and explosive power of the instantaneous shape. It's not easy to absorb water from thin air, and it will delay the battle. Therefore, the most ideal way to use it is through the enemy's eyes, mouth, and other places that are more moist. It is possible to compress the gathering time as much as possible, using food to feed the enemy, to achieve an instantaneous effect. Her Majesty Empress Wu's attitude was candid. She didn't hide the shortcomings of this technique when it was used in actual combat. I'll repeat once more. Pure beads of water have no lethality. It must possess the 5 blessings of sharpening, amplification, acceleration, explosion, and guidance. Only then will it be meaningful. And these 6 structures are all independent. Aside from the condensation ring being the core step, the other effects will need to be increased or decreased according to specific circumstances. For this reason, one must maintain a high degree of calmness and clear-headedness in actual combat when using this technique. Unfortunately, quite a few people aren't able to do this. It has nothing to do with talent. It's just a matter of character. Wasn't character also a part of talent? Luo Nan really wanted to use the root receptacle, root nature, and root trigger division technique he just learned to fight against Her Majesty Empress Wu. Unfortunately, this was meaningless. Her Majesty Empress Wu explained the 6 structural circuits one by one, including the condensation ring. She combined this with the magnified model on the virtual screen and a live demonstration. She explained the profound in simple terms and was very clear and easy to understand. The clarity of the reality level combined with the powerful playback function of the hexier created an astonishing effect. Aside from theory, Her Majesty Empress Wu condensed the structural circuits in a casual manner. Even if she deliberately made them visible for the sake of demonstration, the fluctuations and changes of soul strength could still be sensed by others. This was not easy at all. No wonder the volume of the video file was enormous. How many resources would be consumed to reproduce such details? And there was certainly the specialized technology of the inner world inside. Her Majesty Empress Wu, who was in the reality realm, took the opportunity to sell her personal goods. The current application techniques of the mental side are the art of structure. Ability users fully utilize the plasticity of soul strength to form functional structures with interference power. Then they can influence and control more effective material components to realize the extraordinary effect of the mind distorting reality. Luo Nan nodded over and over as he listened. He thought of the wraith sign. The human-faced arachnid's offensive methods were often realized through complex and special structures. It was just that this fellow had no material foundation at all. It could only create shadows on the mental plane. There was also the configuration that Jack spoke of. It was the operational structure of energy and information. It manifested itself extremely clearly on the body of a burner. Her Majesty Empress Wu even mentioned the high-end application standards of the dripping sword on the topic of the art of structure. According to her, it was not difficult to make the water droplet explode. What was difficult was to condense it into a pellet, to be as sharp as a blade, to strike a vital point without injuring oneself. However, the sculpting and shaping of the condensation ring needed to be extremely precise in order to realize this point. The structure was stable, and it consumed too much mental energy. It was not economical enough, so there was no need to criticize her for seeking perfection. The consumption was too great. It was not economical enough. Luo Nan was very sensitive to consumption right now. His ears immediately perked up. Could it be that this small water droplet, which appeared and exploded in an instant, could consume a large amount of soul strength? His interest rose by several levels in an instant. Unfortunately, Her Majesty Empress Wu did not demonstrate this so-called high-end technique. This caused Luo Nan's malicious conjecture to erupt once more. Could it be that you couldn't do it back then? The video ended, but Luo Nan was still unsatisfied. He had yet to look at the lecture notes that Papercut sent over. Just by starting with Her Majesty Empress Wu's explanation, Luo Nan already had his own understanding. Control, precision and improvisation were the core of the dripping sword technique, but the most basic thing was still precision. The basic requirement was to sculpt the relevant structure on the millimeter scale. A rough mold would be ineffective. Precision was the best. Luo Nan was a precision-oriented mentally enhanced user. His mental senses were first-rate acuity, and he had a basic understanding of configurations. He had an enormous advantage in this aspect. Papercut was right. This technique seemed to have been specially prepared for him. Oh, that's right. He could also be considered an artist. Structural art, in a certain sense, could also be considered a plastic art. Luo Nan temporarily tossed his desire for the heart incineration blade beyond the highest heavens. He couldn't help but want to put this C-rank technique into practice. Plus, he was ambitious. He wanted to come from a higher place. He disdained that kind of short-term, unstable structure. If he was going to use it, he would use the most sophisticated kind. Luo Nan immediately followed Her Majesty Empress Wu's suggestion. He turned on the air humidifier in the room, increasing the moisture content in the air. He followed Papercut's explanation step by step, attempting to sculpt the structure with his soul strength. On one hand, Luo Nan was ambitious. On the other hand, he had a cautious temperament. He didn't want to eat a fatty in one bite. He wanted to completely grasp the relatively complex overall structure of the dripping sword. Instead, he temporarily ignored the 5 types of amplification structures. He stared at the condensation ring with all his attention. This structural circuit was the beginning and foundation of the mental interfering with the material plane. If he didn't thoroughly understand it, he wouldn't be able to talk about the rest. From the magnified microscopic model, the structure of the condensation ring was more like a smooth donut. The center was empty, and the overall rules weren't complicated. But many people would simply kneel if they wanted to accurately depict the three-dimensional curved structure of the inner and outer rings with soul strength. This was the difficulty that Her Majesty Empress Wu emphasized. However, Luo Nan only failed twice in the gradually damp bedroom air. He was able to make the relevant structure appear in the void. The diameter of this condensation ring was only 0.02 millimeters. Just this one move was enough to crush the vast majority of awakened. Of course, the sculpting effort was a bit more in the beginning. According to the timer of the hexier and the time it took for the water molecules to gather and take shape, it was already close to 10 seconds. As for the structure of the condensation ring itself, it was hard to avoid roughness. The time it took for the water droplet to take shape after forming was pitifully low compared to the time it took to gather. It was only 0.4 seconds. It was completely meaningless in combat. But what was that phrase again? Practice makes perfect. Compared to the energy and information operating structure of the human-faced arachnid, doing this kind of work, aside from being smaller in size, was the same as drawing a more complex circle. If one didn't care about the precision and details, then it really wasn't a big deal. Luo Nan was a bit dissatisfied with this. Who said that the consumption was great? But this was indeed convenient for large amounts of practice. Once one was done, there was no need to worry about it anymore. Chapter 378. Luo Nan was stupefied for a moment. In this short amount of time, a bead of water the size of a pinky finger had appeared out of nothing. It was born out of thin air and quietly floated before his eyes. With a slight movement, it refracted the sunlight that seeped in through the window. It was a riot of colors. It was extremely beautiful. A feeling of satisfaction rushed to the top of his mind. Luo Nan grinned, and his mind relaxed. Only then did he feel tired. Tired? Oh, that's right. He might still have a lot of soul power left, but the energy and attention that came with it were related to the physical foundation of the nervous system. It was impossible for him to expend it endlessly. He fell back, arms outstretched, on the bed. A few drops of water fell on his cheeks, forehead, and some on his arms and collar. It was so refreshing that he moaned in comfort. Luo Nan suddenly opened his eyes. He could only watch helplessly as a layer of mist floated down, instantly drenching his body and all the objects around him. Holy shit! Luo Nan jumped up, but it was already too late. The spray of mist had ended, and the quilt on the bed was damp. It was wet and damp, and it felt terrible. The covers of the 2 notebooks on the bed were also full of water droplets. Fortunately, they were made of leather, so they could be easily wiped. As for the quilt, he really had to move it to the balcony to dry. What was going on? The humidifier is also causing an economic crisis. Luo Nan wiped away the water stains on his face. His first reaction was to turn off the humidifier, but it looked like the humidifier was operating normally. He could only release his mental senses to observe the air humidity and the changes on the mental plane. In this way, he discovered some clues. Currently, the aftermath of the interference between the mental and material planes was extraordinarily intense. The sources were different, and the number was extremely great. However, the amplitude of the fluctuations was relatively similar. It had a clear effect on the water vapor in the air. This gave Luo Nan a rough guess. Perhaps it was due to the latter half of his practice that the sculpting of the condensation ring structure had become more reliable. Its ability to sustain itself had greatly improved. After accumulating a certain amount of water, it would naturally take on the form of a water droplet. Because Luo Nan was completely engrossed in pondering the structure of the condensation ring, he was engrossed in training with a single heart. His impression of the ring remained at the very beginning. Just like that, the water droplets lasted longer and longer, and the speed at which they disintegrated became slower and slower. In the end, there were at least a few hundred water droplets floating in the room. When he was distracted and lost control of his mind, the structure of the water droplets became chaotic and exploded, turning into a thick mist. That was about it. Luo Nan shook his head and sighed. He roughly tidied himself up, lifted his blanket, and went to the balcony. Just as he took 2 steps forward, a glint of water flashed in the corner of his eyes. It was a water droplet that had just formed. Oh, this of time of time. Luo Nan hugged the blanket and stared at the beads of water. He was sure that all the water droplets had exploded, and it was definitely true. Perhaps it was because Luo Nan's feeling was on point, but the final structure of the condensation ring that Luo Nan sculpted was the most perfect in terms of shape. Its precision reached a certain standard. After a period of turbulence, the water that had gathered completely dispersed, but the basic structure of the condensation ring did not explode like other rings of the same kind. Instead, it tenaciously preserved itself. Of time of time of. Luo Nan's attention was temporarily focused on this bead of water. Not much of the consumption. Strands. Endless. Perhaps for other mentally enhanced users, long periods of time would be a bit of pressure. But Luo Nan's soul strength was affected by the high output of the format pyramid production line. Every second of progress was several times that of this kind of consumption. It didn't hurt nor itch. If this was called consumption, then the whole world was in an economic crisis. Luo Nan grinned. Since it involved the relevant situation, he instinctively used introspection to look at the state of his god gear. Just as he cut into the past, his thoughts suddenly froze on the spot. Dropped? It was completely different from what he imagined. The water level of the vast ocean of icebergs, which was already overflowing, had actually dropped by a chunk for some unknown reason. It was even lower than yesterday's normal state. With such an astonishing drop, it was no wonder that he felt a sense of exhaustion. Luo Nan was a bit stupefied. This didn't make sense. The consumption of the condensation ring needed to be multiplied by 1,000 to 10,000 times in order to achieve this sort of effect. Luo Nan subconsciously hugged the quilt to his chest. The slight moisture on it reminded him of something. The room had just been sprinkled with water mist. He thought about it. A single condensation ring obviously didn't consume much. But if several hundred condensation rings existed at the same time, then several thousand would be produced in succession, and the process would continue without end. This consumption could no longer be ignored. It was common knowledge that multiple missions consumed a lot of resources. It was possible for this kind of consumption to exceed the output of the format pyramid production line for a period of time. In other words, Luo Nan's large amount of practice had turned into actual milk pouring as several hundred water droplets exploded. He poured the excess soul strength into the river. No, there was still a scene of milk pouring. But what was this? Atomization. Evaporation. Sublimation. Luo Nan laughed bitterly at first, but then he laughed heartily. He even tossed the damp quilt up in celebration. Even though the input and output were completely disproportionate, and the effect couldn't be said to be a permanent cure, it was still a pleasant surprise to be able to resolve a threat. Luo Nan never imagined that the matter would be resolved so easily when his symptoms relapsed. Moreover, he even obtained a rather effective emergency measure. The pressure was immediately swept clean. This feeling of being able to advance and retreat freely was too refreshing. Luo Nan's mood became very good. He cast his gaze toward the water droplet, and it was as if he was looking at a pearl. There should be a certain upper limit to the water vapor that the condensation ring could gather. The growth of the water droplet's volume had already stagnated. In the end, it was only the size of half a pinky finger, with a diameter of approximately 1 centimeter. It wasn't exactly eye-catching, but it was quite eye-catching when refracting light. Luo Nan thought for a moment. He wasn't going to disperse the water droplet for now. He wanted to see how long it could last and how its overall consumption was. He would certainly have to try out the 5 auxiliary structures in a bit. He just happened to use the core condensation ring as a base. Luo Nan hastily hung the quilt on the balcony and went downstairs to eat. The water droplet spun around his body. It was quite spiritual. The water droplet did not have the support of the heart ape technique. Instead, it was tightly linked with his soul strength. It was like an extension of his limbs. As time passed, the power of habit displayed more and more astonishing effects. When one was used to something, one would unconsciously ignore it. Luo Nan temporarily forgot about the water droplet beside him. He fought with the AI butler's anti-human nutritious meal. There was nothing else on this table, but the function of filling one's stomach was complete. Luo Nan didn't stay idle as he ate in large mouthfuls. He originally wanted to flip through the handouts and notes that Papercut had sent over, but after some thought, he continued to flip through the mission posting page. There was nothing else on Her Majesty Empress Wu's posting interface. However, the discussion area below, the traditional message page, had 20 messages that filled a page. Right now, there were a terrifying number of over 18,000 pages. There were only a few awakened in the entire world. Luo Nan remembered Zhang Yingying saying that there were less than 70,000 registered awakened in the entire world. This meant that every awakened had posted at least 5 times in the discussion area. Even though this was the accumulation of 3 years, there were certainly quite a few quarreling and spiteful messages within. But from the perspective of the inner world, this was truly a national event. The influence of the world subjugation event could be seen at a glance. The messages in the reply area were arranged in reverse order by default. The newest message was at the very top. It was from 10 minutes ago, and the content was, "A daily kneel." Luo Nan traced back an hour. There were 2 more messages, indicating that the popularity of the discussion did not decrease. They were still in the godly posts. Luo Nan wanted to understand the atmosphere at the time, so he switched the replies to the proper order. He started from the beginning and skimmed through 3 to 5 pages. Most of the messages were, "Is this real or fake? What a beauty, she's my type. Beware of soul fingerprint collection traps. First-time measurement data, and other hipster messages." Of course, there were also, "The current Wuzetian. She must be a hype," and other idiotic messages that were brutally whipped into corpses. It was very clear that Her Majesty Empress Wu of 3 years ago was not a particularly outstanding character in the world. She did not possess global fame. But it was precisely after this incident that she truly soared to the heavens. She added more and more legendary colors to the world subjugation event. Luo Nan more or less admired her. Even though he felt that the martial empress' secret technique was not as marvelous as it was described in practice, the influence was real. And Her Majesty Empress Wu was capable of shouldering this responsibility. Luo Nan skimmed through a few pages, wanting to change his method. Just thinking about the 360,000 pages was enough to make him collapse. If he really were to read page by page, he would not be able to do anything for the next 10 days to half a month. He used the Hexier's intelligent filtering function to eliminate the boring messages. He only looked at the essential replies. Just like this, there were still over 200 pages left. Many of them were tests of the dripping sword. Some were single columns of data. Some were experimental demonstrations. There were also extremely cruel combat scenes. These were the responses of several tens of thousands of ability users from all over the world toward this technique. However, these dry goods weren't the most popular of the essential posts. It was the era of national entertainment. There were always some funny and amusing messages that grabbed the most eyeballs. Luo Nan saw a string of hilarious scenes of practicing and using the dripping sword. There were all sorts of absurd incidents and all sorts of amusing suicides. The high difficulty of using the dripping sword fueled the vitality of these videos. This would be an excellent starting point if you wanted to replay it. This reply was very long. It was enough to start a series of posts. In fact, this was a link to a hot forum post. The number of replies it drew in was quite large. These replies of replies were distributed in various hot spots in the thread. If the reader was interested, they could see a long string of replies with a light touch of telepathy. Of course, they could also choose to use bullet screen mode, but that was too messy. Luo Nan didn't like it. Anyone who read the thread would inevitably be affected by the hot spots. Luo Nan paid more attention to the ones with a large number of replies. He originally wanted to lock onto the latter half of the lecture, but he stopped midway. He saw a hot spot with over 10,000 replies. What attracted his attention was a scene that left a deep impression on him. It was the moment when Her Majesty Empress Wu suddenly turned her back to the viewer not long after the video started. The poster complained, "I actually took a step back when I saw a beauty. This isn't logical. That's why I became suspicious." The replies instantly went off the mark. Aha! I'm relieved to see the poster take a step back. I really regret it at the time. Step back +1. Regret +1. Step back +1. Regret +10086. Am I the only one to throw myself at her? Raise your hand if you throw yourself at her. Does throwing yourself at her count? You don't even give me a second glance, do you? The poster has already analyzed it below. Everyone is retreating here. The video has a fixed program buried in it. It's to keep you bunch of perverts at a distance. So it was like this. Luo Nan came to a sudden realization when he saw this. So he wasn't the only one who suffered and lost face. This was the common experience of all the participants. The irresistible elements within made up for the young man's wounded heart. But then Luo Nan was confused. The pressure that pierced the weak points of his heart and the fear he felt were also the effects of the program. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.